Welcome back, everybody. Tonight, you don't know it's tonight, you might be listening to it any time of the day, but tonight I am talking to Dr. Paul Vanderbroeck. Did I say that correctly, Paul?
You did indeed, Harv. Thank you.
Close enough. And Paul is coming to us live here from somewhere in Holland.
No, actually in Switzerland. Well, I grew up in the Netherlands, to start that story, but I live in Switzerland currently.
I'm killing it already, Paul. This is brilliant.
That's fine, but that's already. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for the invitation, and I say that I'm very happy to be here and have the opportunity to talk to you. I really enjoy your podcast, and I'm glad to be a guest here.
Paul, it's a pleasure, and I'm dying to get into the topic which we're going to explore. Here's some background. So Paul and I have been introduced by Bob Seldon, and Bob was the editor for my book, which I wrote last year, and Bob guided me through that. And you know Bob via coaching his wife Anita back in the day in Switzerland.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she's the smart one of the two, obviously. And that's true. And I know Bob's going to listen to that, and he'll be nodding right now. And so we've been connected via this. And Paul, thank you for Bob reached out for you to review the book I wrote for Amazon as a writer yourself. And I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
No, I really enjoyed reading it, and it got me into some new thinking as well, so I appreciate that.
There we go. So, and I'm intrigued, Paul, because right now I've got a bit of inferiority complex talking to somebody that's got a PhD, that's done this stuff on the international stage on leadership development, and so all of that's going on for me right now as well. And so just putting that out there. Yeah. So I'll do my best not to be sort of done this awestruck thing, Paul, okay?
Fair enough. Absolutely.
Cool. Where are we going to start? Paul, who are you?
Yeah, so I'm wearing different hats, or have been wearing different hats throughout my life. So I grew up in the Netherlands, and that's why the Holland connection you earlier mentioned, and decided to study history, and particularly I was became interested in ancient history, so Greek and Roman. Did that up to a PhD, and in between also had the opportunity to do some research for that in France and the US. After finishing that, I was set for an academic career. But that was then when I finished with a PhD in the mid-80s. At least in Europe, we were in the middle of an economic crisis, which meant, in those days at least, a lot of budget cuts, and that means few jobs for newcomers in the academic world. So instead of sitting that out on unemployment benefits or the odd financing, I decided to switch careers and use the other part of my personality or other interests, which already applied at university, which is being interested in organizations and how they work. And actually my PhD was about that too. It was about how leaders and followers interact in ancient Rome. I switched careers, and again, the economic crisis didn't make it easy, but ultimately I landed a job with a small consultancy, and soon after that moved into human resource management with Royal Dutch Shell. I never looked back in a way, so I started a career in HR management, which brought me also to Germany as an expert with Shell. Then left Shell and went to work in Switzerland for General Motors, and stayed in Switzerland. Went from Zurich to Geneva to become to head the HR function for multinational machine company, and then ultimately was recruited by UBS, a Swiss bank, and that's sort of the midpoint of my career thus far. And I noticed that when you move up in large organizations, you increasingly get removed from the operational work. You're more coordinating and less doing and deciding. And also politics becomes important, which is not my forte. So that was the time to do another career change, and keeping my interest in leadership and organizations and leadership development. I set myself up as an independent consultant, focusing on leadership coaching, leadership development. Nevertheless, over the years, I've always kept my academic interests, so I've regularly published articles, both practitioner articles and academic papers, and also a few books in the meantime, a few textbooks and business books.
Paul, what was your PhD in?
History. History and sociology, actually, so it was double. Yeah.
And so you strayed from academia, but the history part, because we're going to get into that around the book that you've written. It's interesting you've done this sort of cycle and not maybe come right back to it, but it is almost like you've done a full loop.
Yes, in a certain sense, and now when I'm getting closer to retirement, I think my activities will shift probably more to that research and writing side.
Right, and you work with Bob with it's something called the IMD.
Yes, and I still work for them. Yes.
Yeah, tell us about IMD, because it's. I know the other two. I know Harvard and INSEAD. IMD,
Yes.
I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, so IMD, there's several business schools, international business schools in Europe who compete with, the big ones in the US, like Harvard Business Schools or the other Stanford Business School, providing particularly a lot of education to managers and leaders. Companies send their people there to get training on strategy, marketing, leadership. They also offer MBA programs as well as EMBA programs. So that's their main activity, and because they have an academic status, or I might even say pretension, they also do some research, but on balance it's particularly education, teaching which they do. And you find there people from all over the world who come there and get a training.
What's that? Tell us what. So we're a membership base, and one of our members, I know, went off to INSEAD and did a block course there, and I was dying for him to come back to interrogate him and see what they'd done, and it was pretty comprehensive. It was very expensive, and it was incredibly comprehensive. What sort of stuff does IMD do that you've been involved in?
Yes, so what they do is they offer, since recently they also offer individual executive coaching, which you can just buy and get me or one of my colleagues to work with them. Well, it's very new, but the traditional and the biggest part is they have a program which may be in general about strategy or connected to company vision if a company sends their people together to one course. And then in such a program we have a module different modules, strategy, marketing, finance sometimes, and so forth. And often, not always, there is always a leadership model in that. And that may involve that people undergo a 360 and then work with a coach to debrief that, perhaps with some follow-up sessions later on online. One of IMD's specialities has always been simulations, particularly outdoor, where you put people through a number of exercises which simulate the real world in a different way, but in a compressed way. So it's a great opportunity to test people's behaviors and be able to observe them and then work with them. Okay, what did you do? Increase their self-awareness and help them with their development. So that the main thing on other occasions, like with the MBA, which I really enjoyed working on, because you have the opportunity to work with somebody for a whole year, different times during the year, where you can really go deep with people, usually also using a biographical exercise where you go back into past, how they grow up, and because it's an important moment, really a crossroads in their career and their lives, and it's a big investment. So it's really helpful to not just invest in their professional learning or their learning as in a manager from a technical side, particularly also in themselves as a person and how they go forward in the rest of their career as a leader often, and what motivates them, what are the obstacles that they need to overcome and so forth.
Paul, who do you like working with? What sort of person do you like working with the most?
Bright people, essentially, which can either be the younger, bright, high potentials, or the more senior ones. So I do quite well in organizations which have a fair bit of highly educated people, like in biosciences, pharma, high tech, consultancies, that kinds of organizations.
Why?
I guess because they look most like me. And unlike some of my colleagues who I appreciate, I'm less able to, or less comfortable to coach the full suite of people. There's one thing I should add to that question, because I also enjoy a lot to work with women leaders, and over the years that has also become one of my specialization, coaching women, consulting on gender balance. Did quite some research on that as well. So that's an area of expertise, and with an area of expertise comes also a passion and enjoyment of working with these types of individuals.
So I need to know more about this. How does a male, what's the word, be qualified and relevant to teach female executives or leaders?
Well, as much as a female coach or teacher is qualified to teach a male audience. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing, I think, is if you do your job well as a coach, you are able to take a position from looking from the balcony as a way and overseeing what's happening, and in that regard, being able to help the person to get out of the fray and see what's really going on. The other thing is, it is true that, because I cannot experience it, I may not be able to fully identify, empathize, but I'm not fully identify with this experience of having a job and being pregnant at the same time. On the other hand, while the situation is that it is, that we have a majority of men in senior positions, I know how men in organizations see women, because they tell me. They won't tell my female coach or a female colleague. And that's very important information for women who want to make it in a world where they're still a minority.
This is a whole podcast on its own, Paul.
It is.
But I do want to have a bit more scratch with this topic. What are the things that female leaders need to know coming through? What are the most important things for them to know? And I'm asking from a point of view of being very passionate about female leadership as well.
Well, what's important to know is that to realize that whatever the difficulties they encounter are only partly due to themselves and often due to systemic issues. So let me give you two examples. One of the issues and challenges I often get to work with, because they're brought to the table by my female clients, is the work balance issue. And that often has to do with combining career and family. Now, that is a reality. But often the sort of thing, well, the solution to my work balance issue is I need to get better organized. The problem or the cause of it really is that the organization they work for only offer one career path, where where you may continue your employment from a part-time position if you wish, but once you do that, you're off the career track, and it's extremely difficult to get off again once you want to accelerate your career again when your family situation is more manageable or the kids are bigger. So it's that which needs to be negotiated. How can I get a employment situation which suits my family situation, while at the same time not losing career opportunities for later, and what can we do to make that work? So that's one thing. The other thing is that leaders learn very well from examples and particularly role models, and that's one of the reasons I've written also my latest books. The difficulty with women is, again, in this situation we are facing many organizations, that they have very few role models. So who can I learn from in order to get to a more senior position? And that's very difficult, and two things happen. Either women say, okay, if those are the role models, these men, then I have to be like them. And so they try to impersonate such roles, and which then at some point backfires because they are not authentic in that role. The other situation, well, I mean, these role models are not for me. I find it difficult to imitate or impersonate. So what do I do? And that usually has an impact on the self-confidence. Where do I go? There are no examples, and that's not very helpful to advance your career. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and Paul, it's interesting because I think it's less now, but in the past, certainly in my earlier years, you would see women who were impersonating men.
Yes.
And I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was a certain type of woman that was succeeding. And the term, other women would say they'd pull the ladder up after them. So they would scale the heights, but they wouldn't enable other women to come up behind them.
Yeah.
And I know lots of other women would get very frustrated with that. Yeah. What, and I've written that I believe organisations often run way better under female leadership, or more feminine style leadership than masculine leadership. And that's a generalisation. And but I've the old adage, I've never seen or know very few countries that have gone to war with a female president or prime minister.
That's not quite true.
And it's funny because you being a historian, I'm a generalist, right? So tell me about that.
Well, there are exceptions, but the difference is not that women are less aggressive or less inclined to go to war. The difference is that when they go to war, they do it more out of a cost-conscious perspective or out of a defensive perspective. So, when the Falklands were attacked, Margaret Thatcher didn't think twice. Well, she had a whole team around her, said, "Oh, no, we're not going to do anything." And she took things in hand and took the Falklands back. And there are some other examples of that. If you look at further in the past, Elizabeth I of England, she had a lot of a whole team of aggressive people around her who wanted to attack Spain and France or whatever. And she said, "Look, what does it bring? Well, yeah, we don't know, but it's honorable and so. Well, I can't give something," she said. "Come back to me if you can give me a good plan that it really brings us something, a benefit.
Yep.
And otherwise we're not doing it." Yeah? Whereas when she was attacked, the famous scene of the Spanish Armada, nobody else than her would have been able to better defend England as she did. But then there are aggressive ones. We are now faced with a situation in Ukraine and Russia, which started with Catherine the Great, who did a number of big conquests aggressively, and made Russia into a world power because of that. And because in the meantime, Russia lost those things she conquered, and now they wanted to get it back again. We are faced with the situation here, but it's not really her fault because it's a long way back.
Paul, do you want to touch on where we're at with this conflict at the moment in the Ukraine?
Look, it's a very difficult situation. My hope is that particularly Europe is able to muster enough resources to keep the Ukraine in the fight and hopefully get a positive results out of it. Because if not, there is a lot at stake, particularly in Europe, with regard to our way of life, our freedom, our democracy, and so forth. I don't think the Russians will send tanks to Amsterdam, but there is a possibility if Europe is not strong enough that we end up in a situation like Finland was during the Cold War, where they're not really fully free in what they were able to do.
From New Zealand, we watched it on the news. It's a long way away. Yeah. We hear about the drone strikes. We hear about stuff in the media, but we don't live what you live in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it comes close. Even if we live in Switzerland, it's a neutral country, but nowadays, what does neutrality mean? My son just finished his military service there, and then that also brings some thoughts to mind.
Yep. Yep. So, let's start the podcast, Paul, as to the focus of tonight's conversation, which I'm dying to understand the motivation and where you began with this. So, Paul has written a book called Lead Like Julius Caesar, and I'm intrigued. Why?
Yeah, so there's several reasons why. I mean, again, it's the period of history I've always been most interested in, and also, I have a PhD in, so I could say I know something about it. The other reason is that I've come across Caesar a number of times. The first time in PhD, but at the time I saw him as a normal political leader, a very successful one, but otherwise nothing particularly special about it. But when I came across him several times, working on a comparison with that period, with the financial crisis, working with some students in Rome, using him as a case study for leadership, and also in another book I wrote about women leaders, where I came across Caesar as the manager of Cleopatra. I noticed that he's much more complex and interesting than I thought. So I thought, well, perhaps there's some work to be done there. The other reason is that this working with historical case studies has become something which I enjoy doing, and I've seen also as being helpful in leadership development. Finally, Caesar is special. I mean, he brought us, because on one hand, he's very broad in his achievements. He's not the best general in history. He's not the one who conquered the most territories, but he did, whereas most successful leaders are very good at one thing, he was very good at a number of things, and that accumulation of achievements really makes him stand out. And also, he was the origin of so many firsts. His tragic death on the Ides of March has really become, the mother of all political assassinations. After a very quick victory, he said this, Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Well, that has become the archetype of all victory speeches. He crossed the Rubicon to start a civil war. Crossing the Rubicon has ever since been the metaphor for the point of no return.
Yep.
And as some of others said, I mean, the US government still has a few people they call not managers or head, but they call czars, which comes from the Russian Tsar, which the Russians got from Caesar. So I mean, it's still still there, so that's it's an iconic figure, and for that reason as well, worthwhile to look at him from a different perspective than all the other many books that have been written about him.
Paul, when you started the book, did you have everything you needed to know about him before you started writing, or was it about writing and research at the same time?
Yeah, it's research first and then writing and research at the same time. Yeah.
And when you started researching him, you would have had a like you're interested in to start. You know, everybody knows his name. So when you started researching from your angle, what popped up that you thought, didn't see that coming?
Yeah, so the few things. One is the importance of his upbringing, his early years, and also the role of his mother.
Yep. So tell me about that.
So he did. Let's say that two things in his upbringing are important than his mother. One is he grew up as an odd one out, in the sense of he was part of the elite. He was an aristocrat, but an impoverished aristocrat. So his family didn't have enough money to live in the nice neighborhood, but they lived in a nice house in a poor neighborhood. So that means that among his peers with which he interacted, he was always the poor guy. We don't have much information about that, but that's the reality, and we can imagine what that meant for him in growing up. In his neighborhood, he was also different because he was a rich kid in a poor neighborhood. It also had an impact, and for one thing, it made it easier for him to interact with his soldiers later on who are from let's say, a lower social status than them.
So he could relate to the common man.
Absolutely, and also know what it is to be different, and what diversity means, and they use that also to his advantage. The other thing is that he grew up in a very violent period with two successive civil wars, which were really, really nasty, where, Yugoslav, Balkan style in the 90s, where neighbors told off neighbors to the authorities because they were from the wrong party, and not because they wanted their house. And that kind of thing. So there was a lot of violence, treachery, beheadings, you name it.
I just want to explore this. Why are those wars so intense and nasty?
The civil wars, you mean?
Yeah. You look at the Balkan, you look at World War II. Apparently the Nazis were, and what was it called then? When the Serbs and the Croats were fighting, apparently the Nazis were scared actually occupying the land because the fighting was so ferocious and What is it about these civil wars that just bring out so much brutality?
I don't know. I've never looked into that specifically, but I can only speculate. I think one of the things which plays a role is that it gets the political, because often there's some kind of a political or religious ideological reason why the fighting starts, but that then get mixed up with other animosities and tensions, economic, ethnic, neighbors, it's also in a way, if two countries fight, it's a bit more formal, whereas if you have a civil war, it's less formal because the political structure is split in two, and that seems to also perhaps taking the lid off of the social control, which sort of forces people to stop themselves from doing horrible things.
That makes sense. Okay, so Caesar grew up in a period with that civil unrest. He could relate to the common man. Tell me about his mother.
Yeah, so just to finish the story about the violent thing that had two impacts on his life. One hand, his values. He was not against violence, but one of his key values was forgiveness and clemency, because he saw that was missing in that time, and he didn't want to see that again. And the other thing is that he was very wary of close friendships. Because you've seen so many people, so much treachery, and I think, and also growing up as an only boy, made him careful to enter into close relationship. Now his mother was from a much richer family than his father. But Aurelia, as she was called, seemed to have signed up for Caesar's father's project, which was to bring up the family again into the top of the Roman society. So a very ambitious family project, which in Rome, if you want to move up the ranks, that meant political jobs, do them well, and military jobs. So Aurelia signed up for that, and when Caesar's father died, when Caesar was a young adult, which for the Romans was about 14, 15, she took that project over, and she used her network of her family, her wealth, to push Caesar into that career and realize that family vision. And she's been there for the biggest part of Caesar's career until she died, in an active role in the background, because there was not much more she could do as a woman in this patriarchal society.
So how does a young man from a modest background rise to the position he did?
In what way do you mean?
Well, he didn't have the money or the social standing to, nobody would have expected him as a young man to lead Rome.
No, that's true. So she, first of all, she gave him an excellent education, hired a very good, homeschooling was the standard for the Roman elite, so she hired excellent teachers from Greece and from Egypt to teach him. Then she used her network to get him his first job. And then a second job when he was abroad studying. His mother was working in Rome, so he could get into a prestigious priesthood. And she also protected his reputation. So Caesar had married first, and then his wife died, the mother of his daughter. Then he married a second woman, younger than him, and then something happened. There was a women's religious ceremony in Caesar's house, which was organized by his wife. So there were only women there, only women around, but his mother was there, and his sister, and so forth. And then Caesar's young wife had a lover, it seemed. And he entered the house disguised as a girl. But they discovered him, and then Caesar's mother immediately took charge, closed the whole house, got everybody organized to find, because he had dated this guy. They found him and put him on the street in shame. Afterwards was a trial, so on. And then Caesar's mother went to Caesar, who now had this prestigious priesthood position, said, Julius, or Gaius, this is not a good thing. And what Caesar was immediately divorce his wife to protect his reputation. And it's strong indications that his mother was behind that to make this happen.
And so that's still not enough to lead Rome. Then what happened?
Well, so then subsequently he went through the ranks. You need to get elected every time to get a higher promotion, and the higher up Caesar came, and the older his mother became, we hear less of her. But it doesn't mean that she was not active in the background to network on his behalf informally. She had, again, she was a member of an important family, and she used her brothers, who were older than Caesar, had senior position, to work on his behalf.
Fascinating. So, Paul, what the book you've written is Lead Like Julius Caesar.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that it should not be interpreted as do exactly what Caesar did, but it means that here is a successful, not perfect leader who has dabbed into quite a number of things in politics, in government, in military leadership, in a bit in business. There is a lot to learn from that. Again, not interpreting, but there's things you get inspired by in the way he pursued his ambition, and there's an opportunity to translate what you see from his successes, but also failures, into your own career.
And what would be, so in his time, I mean, he was considered quite extraordinary, wasn't he?
Yes, already from the beginning, yeah.
And what was his blind spots?
So his blind spots were emotional intelligence, and the other one is receiving feedback, which connects very well to the concept of vulnerability in your book, Harv. So emotional intelligence, he was pretty good in sensing and understanding people and their feelings, and how his actions influenced or what reaction they would get from other people. But where he was less good is sensing collectively what was going on in large groups of people, and that got him in trouble time and again. So it got him in trouble in the Senate, where he was several times. Even if he had the best rational arguments and super plan, he did not sense what was really going on and why people were not agreeing or following him. In Gaul, which is this great conquest of Gaul, super success, but nevertheless, when he had conquered everything, all of a sudden, poop, there was a huge revolt, which almost cost him the conquest, and he didn't see it coming, because he did not see that there were some emotional, ideological things going on, which made these Gauls, even if they were conquered already, still rise up in revolt. Something similar happened later on in Spain, and because Caesar was very good, he, in all of those cases, he's been able to, with considerable trouble, to overcome that and come out winning, until the last time, because in my view, and I think that in that respect I've added a bit of a new perspective to the Ides of March, he was assassinated because he did not sense this dissatisfaction which was brewing in a considerable part of the elite.
What's a world leader that has been very good at sensing the crowd? I
think the first one which comes to mind is Churchill, because he was far from perfect. I mean, he botched a few things earlier in his career, but at that moment in the 1940s, he was the only one who sensed this country is ready for war. this country is not necessarily wanting to go the appeasement track, which everybody else thought would be the case. And he sensed that and played on that, and it worked. I think Roosevelt is another case who sensed that this country, US, which has grown up individualistically with as they call it, the pursuit of happiness, where everybody takes his future in their own hands and has the opportunity to do something, and that really was a success story until the crash of 1929, and Roosevelt said, well, now this country is ready now for a more collective approach with the New Deal, and it made him win the elections.
Look, the irony of this, Paul, this is crazy, because this is the second conversation I've had with a historian in 24 hours around the New Deal.
Right.
And this woman that was an American historian talking about the Americans go to war with each other every 40 to 60 years. They have a big fight, and they're going through that right now. And he knew that period was up, and was part of that New Deal was to stop the conflict of that time. Yeah. Which is, and it's interesting. I hadn't, as soon as you said church, I thought, oh yeah, but what I hadn't thought about was sensing, because everybody else had capitulated. Everybody else had capitulated too, and Great Britain. I mean, it was a lot mightier then, but it's still not. It's still not a mighty country to stand up to this bloody war machine.
Yeah.
But they did, didn't it? It was,
Yeah.
And if the country weren't ready, didn't want to, it wouldn't have worked.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And
I mean, to stay, I mean, we don't need to add it on, but I think Thatcher is another example. She sensed that the country was ready for, including the working class, for a more individualistic or less collective approach.
Yeah. Look, it's and so if you take that back to a CEO role, Paul, how does that translate into? And we're jumping around here a little bit, but I just want to bring it back.
That's a relevant question. Yeah.
When you bring it back to a CEO role and sensing the crowd, how does that work? Or not?
Well, what you need is information from people in the know. There are, of course, things you can do to get the information yourself, to be visible, to go to place and so forth. But what is extremely important is that you have a feedback network, and that brings us back to Caesar and your book, the vulnerability part. So one of the other weaknesses of Caesar is that he was so keen on being good, get excellent results, which also was pleasing his mother and dad, by the way, that he made it difficult in his attitude of self-confidence and high performance and so forth, made it difficult for others to give him feedback, not because they were afraid of speaking truth to power, but more because there's some interesting research has been done in that, because I think, if he has that job, he probably is there for a reason, and secondly, if he shows himself that he's so confident, who am I to tell him otherwise, or to tell him that he needs some feedback? And then that becomes very dangerous, because that happened to Caesar, and then you miss these important pieces of information which allow you before things happen to intervene and do something about this. It's all emotional, it's all irrational, and these undercurrents which bubble up and at some point turn into action, which is not helpful.
I'm going to jump to something that happened today and in Formula One. I'm not a car enthusiast at all, but I am fascinated when I read when things have gone wrong. So Red Bull has been successful for a number of years, and today, in the last 24 hours, they have sacked their boss.
Right.
And he, I haven't seen it, but apparently he gave a very impassioned speech to the people of Red Bull, and he said, obviously I didn't see this coming. Now, he's been very successful for a period of so many years, and this year he's not. And
the Ides of March, yeah.
And I thought to myself, really? You didn't see this coming? This cutthroat thing? And so I don't know, I was bemused by it and just going, this guy's obviously been very, very good at what he's done. He's had a bad year this year. And, they chop drivers, they're merciless,
Yes.
the way they drop drivers. And I thought, wow, and he didn't see it coming. And I'm going, yeah, I was really surprised about that.
Yeah.
And so that's the sort of thing you're talking about, is when leaders are not getting information coming back to them.
Yes, and if I may expand on the example you just gave, I think it's even particularly difficult. That was Caesar's case, where things are going very well. In the case of Red Bull, you're going to say things haven't gone well for years. So, he could have started to ask a few questions,
Yep.
Because he said, well, people may not be happy about this performance. But in Caesar's case, he was doing very, very well. And still people were, again, happen. And that's the case of you see that it has happened at Unilever a few times, where there have been the big Dutch, which comes from CEO changes fairly suddenly, fairly briefly, because it was either from the organization or for the stakeholders. There was something going on, which they didn't like, or they had less confidence in the future, and choop, all of a sudden the CEO was gone, and they didn't see it coming either. Even when the results are fairly decent or even good.
Yeah. How does a CEO cope with too much information coming back to them? How do they know what to listen to?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very difficult one. I think the best way of doing it is to do it in the way you normally run your business. In the sense of good CEOs generally don't take big decisions on their own in their office, but they, as a minimum, have this conversation with the people around them and get some expert advice before coming to a decision. And with this, that applies to them too. What is really important when you ask others to interpret that information you get or even summarize it, is that you get diverse advice, contradictory even. Again, coming back to Caesar, one of the things which caused also this problem we just talked about, I'm not longer represented, that he also was in a situation where he got too much information, and he had a few very efficient people working for him, assistants, and they filtered information the best they could from their own perspective, think they're doing a good job, but they had their own frame and filters through which the information came to Caesar biased, as opposed to, you have to work with summaries and interpretations, but make sure that you get them from very different people. Just as you do with your business.
Paul, I've got stuck on the sensing the crowd piece.
Yes.
Because I'm watching somebody right now in real life not sensing the crowd.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any advice that could be given to this person that would help. Because they've got a huge intellect, but the senses haven't been developed.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it as clearly as when you brought it up there about sensing the crowd. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's the thing. And it is a form of emotional intelligence.
It is, yeah. And it's something which, happens a lot. The people I work with as a coach, it's something which occurs rather often, both in, let's say, the individual emotional intelligence on a one-to-one basis, as well as in the more collective sense. But with the type of people you just described, right? Often, many times, technologists, what in my experience works a lot is to speak their language. In other words, they respond very well to data. So if you can get them that information through, for example, a 360-degree questionnaire in a data form with nice figures and percentages and that kind of thing, and the way they usually read and respond to information, that can work quite well.
Yep. Paul, with this research and writing the book, did you like Caesar?
Look, I've come to appreciate him more over the years, and that's probably particularly because of his vulnerabilities, his darker side, so to speak. And I think that, he like is a big word, but very interested in and admiring, well, because he did great things despite great difficulties, and to some extent also despite of himself. I think his own personal, his own happiness, to a certain extent, got lost in this drive for achievement.
And how do we know? Because, the thing is, this is all going off historical writings. How do you know if they're accurate as a historian?
Yeah. No, that's a very essential question, of course. So sometimes you actually find things. So we have written documents in stone or in bronze where it says, in this year Caesar was consul, and in that year he was dictator. So, yeah, and if you can combine that piece of hard evidence with things that have been written in the time, then you say, okay, well, what this person, at least this piece of information that this person has written in a letter or in a speech is accurate, because we can see it on this piece of bronze or in stone. And so that's how you build up the accuracy. And of course, the more effect appears in different sources, the more likely it is that it's accurate. 100% accuracy is difficult to achieve,
Yeah.
but to be honest, if I work with a person, or even if you work with a case study of a CEO who is living now, how accurate is that? If you ask a CEO, tell me what you did last month, and let's work with that, it's hindsight.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's an opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And look, it's something I put at the beginning of my book, was this is based on a true story.
Based on, exactly. It
You
is
know?
not a true story, it's based on. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a block. I had a block a few years ago about writing the book, and I talked to an author, and I said, "How do I get through this block of, I'm drawing on my memory and it's my interpretation?" And she said, "Because it's a story. You're writing a story. You're not writing a mathematical journal. This is a story, and it's your story, and you write it in your style, and you write it as close to what you think is true or is your truth." And that let the handbrake off, because I thought, I'm absolutely sure a lot of the stuff I've written didn't happen like that, but it's my interpretation, and that's what I'm writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul, what is there, having written this book, how has it changed you?
I think I've become aware of a few more things, and yeah, it has changed me in the sense that there's more to be done in this way, and that's I'm looking at ways to do that.
No, that doesn't make sense to me. Say that again. There's more to be done.
In with this particular type of work, with history, with case studies, with using this type of information, or to help people learn, because that's at the end of the day what I want to achieve.
Yeah.
I don't want. It's great if people find it interesting, but I'm really, really happy when people say, "Yeah, this has been helpful for me. I found something. Can you do something with that?"
And look, Paul, the great gift for me tonight is the sensing the crowd piece. That just, I've got asterisks all around that term, because it's I've never been so conscious of that before. Yeah, and go, it is a thing. It is a thing. Yeah. And you see leaders who are not conscious of the crowd, and they're so detached from that, and they're not in unison or coordinated with those around them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Paul, you read my book, and you and critiqued it, and wrote a review on Amazon. What where do you see the overlaps of the work that I have done from non-academic and quite different background? Where are the areas that they have woven together or laced together, do you think?
Well, if you look at leadership development, which is my field, or one of my fields, I've learned that biographies, also known as case studies, or for individuals, autobiographical exercises in shorter or bigger ways, are very helpful for learning. So, and I think that's the contribution of your book. Now you went beyond the case study in the sense of that you also used it to introduce some concepts like collective intelligence and so forth. But I think, yeah, this life story and this career story, is very helpful. It's inspiring. People can learn from it, can take something from it, and even the people who say, "I don't like or the story, or I'm against the story, or I would have things done totally different," that too is learning.
Yep. Yep. And look, I've had two people who did not like the story, the second part of the story. In both cases, I was delighted by that.
Yeah.
And I thought, yep, that absolutely figures. One, I was surprised that they had read it at all.
That's a tribute.
Yeah, and two, that they had this reaction of not liking the second part of the book, and I thought, that's good. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's part is that they engage with it, that they don't say, "I don't want to read it."
Yeah,
That's
100%.
but engaging and reading and then saying, "This is not for me," or "disagree," or "don't like it." Great.
Yep. And it has surprised me. It surprised me how much joy I get from people reaching out who having read it, and I don't know why it's a surprise to me, but I think I was so deep in writing it, I hadn't envisaged what it would be like once it was actually out there.
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, oh yeah, that's right. It's a thing. It's in shops and stuff, and people buy it and read it. And the great thing with LinkedIn and so forth is that people can, can contact you and connect back,
Absolutely.
which is
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, just mindful of our time, what have we missed out that you'd like to round this conversation off with?
Look, there's so much to talk about, but I think one of the things which perhaps I would like to emphasize is that you talk about what's different about this book from other business books or even historical books, is that it's my way of working, which is transdisciplinary, and that particularly means in this case that I've used 3 leadership development instruments. I appreciate and use a lot of my coaching on careers, on personality, and on leadership behaviors. In this book, I applied them to Julius Caesar, and that has led to a number of the insights we have talked about today. So I think from a methodological point of view, I think this makes this book different, but it also, let's wait and see what people say about it. But from my perspective, it's a workable and successful methodology to work in this transdisciplinary way and apply things from different disciplines into such a case study.
Paul, have you got another book in planning at the moment at all?
Yeah, there are several ideas. The most let's say, the nearest ideas from a time perspective is probably is that I worked with one personality test, the RDI from MRG Group, to look at Caesar's motivations. And for them, it was also new to see this instrument used in this way, and they appreciate it a lot. And I've done an interview and podcast with them as well, specifically on that topic. And the other book I written some years ago about 4 historical case studies, in this case 4 women leaders for historical queens. We may revisit that and use in this motivation instrument to those 4 women leaders and see what that brings in general, but perhaps also specifically for coaching and developing women leaders.
Mm. Mm. Paul, I'm going to round off now. And I was just reflecting on this, how much work you would have had to have put in to gather all this together and to bring it into something of value for readers. Who is the book written for? Who is the target?
The target is first for people in a leadership position, or those who aspire to make that their career, mm-hmm. So younger and senior leaders, and who want to self-develop, put it that way. So read something which helps them in their career, in their leadership, and so forth.
Yep.
Secondly, it's for leadership professionals like myself, I mean, coaches or teachers or people working in HR, responsible for people development, to help them understand a particular case study better, and with that being able to help the leaders in their organizational development. Like you just said, you learned something about sensing the crowd. Now that's something, if I would be a leadership developer, I mean, I've been myself head of leadership development in the past. That's something I would, after reading this book, put more attention to in the development programs I offer to my population.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah, and then thirdly, anybody interested in reading about historical readers, there's a whole audience out there who likes that.
Because I was intrigued because he's one of the most written about leaders of all time, and it's like, do we need another book on Julius Caesar? So it was. I found that absolutely fascinating. Yeah. My mind also strayed during the conversation when you talked about Julius Caesar and talking about Gaul and so forth, and the wonderful comic strips of Asterix the Gladiator.
They just brought out a Netflix cartoon series.
Oh, really?
And I recommend watching it. It's quite.
Have they done a good job of it?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
I just love it. So my mind did flick to that.
Absolutely.
When we started talking about Asterix, came to mind as well. I thought I'll bring that up at the end. Yeah. Paul, look, thank you very, very much for your time. One last question. What world leader is inspiring you at the moment?
Oh, that's a very difficult one. I don't think there is one who is inspiring me in the sense of, wow, this is really something good, or that motivates me, or makes me feel better. But I'll give you a controversial answer.
Yeah.
Authentic as I am. I do want to mention an effective leader.
Cool.
And that's Giorgia Meloni of Italy at the moment, in the sense of that, every time you give somebody like that a positive rating, people think you endorse their politics,
Right.
which and that blurs the capability of people to actually see through. She's an effective leader in the sense that she'll be able to create a stable government, which is in the country certainly something rather unusual. And a stable government is always beneficial for a country. And she's also been able to, as a woman leader, been able to stay authentic, and being able to address things in her own way. She does not fall into the trap of being as controversial or confrontational as the French President Macron, or other of her peers, but has her own way of influencing things, and she has become rather influential in her own somewhat subdued way. She's also an example of a woman leader able to combine family and work. It's difficult to look at her again because she's controversial politically, and that was the same problem with Margaret Thatcher as well. But from a woman leader who is effective in exercising power, whatever her politics, she is an example. Now,
Excellent.
probably people are going to hate me for this when I say this, but I'm saying it anyway because it's. I can say it from a perspective of having done the research. So.
Paul, we don't have any haters on this, I've got to say. I haven't had any of that. The thing with collective intelligence, the thing I'm one of the very proud of is that we cover every political spectrum, from the far right to the far left and everything in between. And I'm really proud that we can create space that they can come in from those different perspectives, and it's really important to create space where people can have different views and not have to hate on people because they don't agree with them, and things change and perspectives change, and it's different angles, sometimes by zooming out or zooming in. Yeah. Paul, thank you very much for this conversation and your time, and good luck with the sales. We're going to put in the link that there is if they use a link here, that people listening to this podcast can get a 20% discount, I think. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll put that in the link as well. And stay on the line, because I'm going to stop recording now and say thank you very much.
Thank you, Harv. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your great questions, which really have progressed my thinking, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Brilliant.